Hey, folks, and welcome to another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Alan Saunders. That is not Zachary Smith. That is Nick Farabaugh, formerly of SteelersNow.com, currently of Penn Live. And I know I promised a special guest, and unfortunately, my special guest for today was not able to join us. We're going to reschedule that, hopefully, for next week. But I didn't want to leave you guys without anything special, so I brought Nick back for a Thursday reunion show. Nick, what's up?
What's up, Alan? What's up? It's good to be back. Old stomping grounds.
There you go. Nick, you were at practice today. Steelers have their final. It feels like a Friday, right? Because it was a Friday practice, no pads, emphasis on, in sort of instruction and that kind of thing instead of physicality. Defense even wore their colored shirts for the first time this year. We saw Cam and company out there with their little dress shirts that they wear every Friday. And then we kind of got, some of the plan for the Steelers' final preseason game against the Detroit Lions. We're going to see Russell Wilson. We're going to see the starters. It sounds like, though, what Mike Tomlin really wants is for them to not play as poorly as they did last week, and then get out of the way so he can get to evaluating guys that are battling for a roster spot.
I think that's exactly what happens. And you can see by the amount of time both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields played against the Bills that they want to see more, right? Russell Wilson was supposed to play roughly 4 series. He played 5. Justin Fields played the rest of the game after that. He played 2.5 quarters. So, yeah, I think they want to see more out of this offense. Listen, the first team offense, literally, Alan, they have scored nil. I mean, that you want to at least put up points on the board. They looked lifeless last week for all 4 quarters. So, honestly, I think they just want to see the basics executed. Quarterbacks hit your layups. Receivers run the right routes. Offensive tackles don't get beat to the inside 3 straight times. All of these things, I just think quarterback center exchange, all of these basic things that have just popped up, Alan, I think that is what they want to see because they keep talking about practice versus the games. Alan, I'm not sure they've ever looked that bad at practice as they have in the first 2 preseason games. It's been like a different offense. Not that they've looked great every day on offense, but I don't think they've ever looked that bad.
It's really interesting because there are teams out there that are not going to play their first team offense at all in the preseason, that are just not going to do it. And so, I don't know, it's curious. You can kind of get, I think you can, obviously, we saw it last year, right? You can certainly overreact to some preseason games. I know the Steelers, as a team, place a lot of importance on them. That's why they want their starters out there. But I think, for me personally, I'm not freaking out about what happens. Like I said, the Los Angeles Rams aren't going to play Matthew Stafford at all. They're not going to play Puka Nacua at all. Should their fans be freaking out about those guys going into the season? Like the Steelers sort of are about the way this offense has looked through, 8 drives, something like that?
No, I mean, I don't necessarily think so. I think the preseason is not for evaluating teams. It's for evaluating individual players. That is what I have almost always believed about the preseason. I don't look at it as a way to evaluate teams. That's why you don't evaluate what the Steelers' offense was looking like last year and saying, yes, this offense is going to be like top 10. They looked like a top 10 offense through 3 preseason games, and then obviously they weren't even close.
Top 5, top 1 maybe.
Right. They looked awesome. I mean, they went up and down the field against the Falcons. They went up and down the drive, 2 drives against the Bills, and they were out. I mean, that happened last year. And then this year it's been the complete opposite. Literally, you could not get more polar opposite from how the offense was last preseason to now. But that's why you don't evaluate teams. You evaluate talent. And I think you go back and watch the film, and there's a lot to actually be positive about, too. I don't think everything was doom and gloom. I don't think they're that far away from putting it together. Certainly, I think you go back to their first game against the Texans. Justin Fields had engineered a few of those drives into Texans territory, and then they had something dumb come up. Something happened that prevented them from putting points on the board. So I think, you just got to get the stuff that you execute at a basic level out of there. And more importantly, you need to see some individual players play better. Guys like Broderick Jones. I think you just need basic level play from other guys too. So I think that's where you get concerned is at an individual level. But I haven't thought all 11 guys when you go out there are in complete disarray. I don't think that's what it's been like. And again, it is the preseason. And I've seen them put together good days in practice. Again, practice is not games, but it counts for at least a little bit of something if you have seen somebody do successful things in practice. So you can do it. It's just going to be, can you translate?
Yeah, and I think given the number of people on this offense that are doing things that they've never done before or in a new setting, you got a new coordinator, you got a new quarterback, you got a new center, you got a couple rookies, and like there's a lot of new there, like some popcorn, as Mike Tomlin calls it, like things cropping up to like kill drives or prevent them from scoring. Not entirely unexpected, at least not by me at this point in the schedule. The last thing I want to kind of touch on in this, I want to get your opinion about this, is the Steelers go awfully hard compared to other teams. They tackle a lot in training camp. They hit a lot. They play a lot of their regulars, a lot of the preseason. And as a result, and maybe not necessarily directly as a result, but certainly, you have a kind of laundry list of walking wounded this time of year. They're the one major injury. Nate Herbig, won't be back, but Alex Highsmith's been dealing with a groin. Jeremiah Moon's banged up. Dylan Cook's banged up. Joey Porter's banged up. Probably Jalen Warren, obviously, with his hamstring. Roman Wilson. Are the Steelers doing more harm than good, do you think, by the level of physicality and the level of participation in that physicality from their higher-level players to this point in the season?
I don't necessarily think it's more harm than good, but I do know that there are good teams that don't do nearly as much as they do. They're more drill oriented. I think a lot of teams are at this time of year. Now the Steelers get more physical than a lot of teams, and I do think in the AFC North it plays to their benefit. I think that's part of why they're so good in the AFC North. They have been physical and they know how to drag teams down into that physicality with them, how to match that level of physicality with them. And it does, I think, help the Steelers get amped up early in the season. I think it helps them start well and kind of hit the ground running. So I think that's part of what it does. But I do think I think the Steelers, what they could do is I think they could use a little bit more detail oriented parts of practices. I think, we don't see a ton of Arthur Smith just going over specific parts of things. He does obviously in meetings, but I know, Kyle Shanahan is doing that a ton over with the 49ers. And the 49ers have a pretty physical camp too, but not as quite as physical as the Steelers. Like, you talk to anybody that comes to a Steelers training camp, Alan, and they will say, this is like the hardest training camp. This is the most physical training camp. Even the Ravens, like Anthony Averett and Patrick Queen and Deshaun Elliott, will tell you this is such a physical camp. So I don't think they're doing a ton of harm with it. But I do think you could draw it back a little bit, but it definitely amps them up right away. And you see tangible benefit from it. I think the Steelers overall, as the season goes along, are better tacklers in space. They are better there, and their ball carriers also can work on yak and live drills and different things like that. So you train drills and you train certain things against live tackling that you can't. So I do think that's important enough.
Yeah, I mostly agree with that. I think the couple really good points there are their play within the division. I think a lot of people have criticized the Steelers for a lot of things, not just this, kind of like saying that it's a backward team, or they're they're focused on things that like the rest of the league isn't focused on, and like sometimes that's true, but it's also like you have to win your neighborhood. You have to play the AFC North games. Like the Steelers, have some throwback tendencies, but go look. I mean, the Cleveland Browns run the ball more than anyone, except for maybe the Baltimore Ravens. That's who they're designed to beat, and it's a little bit different. They value some things a little bit differently than other teams as a result of that. And then you look at their week one results. I mean, obviously not a good result last year against San Francisco, but two of the last three seasons have gone on the road as underdogs and won in week one. I think on the whole, if you'll take a win over Cincinnati, a win over Buffalo, and a loss to San Francisco in those last three season openers. It seems like whatever the preparation process is going for, it's mostly getting home there. And we'll see. I mean, I think this is actually a sneaky tough test this year in Atlanta. I think this is a team that was better on, defense was pretty good on paper last year. They've gotten a lot better over the last couple of weeks. I know Raheem Morris is a really good coach. He's going to have them fired up. So I think that's a pretty tough, sneaky tough test. I think it's a game a lot of Steelers fans are overlooking. But yeah, I'm generally in agreement that I think the way the Steelers handle themselves is largely good for business, especially the kind of team they are and the kind of team they want to be. I think if they had a different mindset about the way they were approaching football, if they were a team that was going to play 11 personnel all game and sit back there with a quarterback who's going to be a point guard and throw 60% of the time, maybe you would structure practice a little bit differently. But if you're going to run the ball and you're going to play defense, I don't know how you'd get better at those things without hitting.
Right, and it's going to be interesting if the Falcons that have done the complete opposite for a lot of this. They haven't played a lot of their guys in the preseason. I think 2 years ago, we remember the Bengals did that, and then the Bills did that too. I remember when they beat the Bills specifically. Sean McDermott made it a point the next preseason to start playing his guys because they came out so rusty in that game. So I do think it knocks rust off, which I think matters, and especially matters this year for like Russell Wilson, who missed 2 full weeks of practice. He needs more reps. So it matters a lot in that respect. So I think it does have early season game for the Steelers. And generally speaking, I know Nate Herbig's out for the season, but generally speaking, we don't usually see a lot of, guys that get injured for the year. It might be minor things like hamstrings and all of that, but we generally don't see guys, going down with serious injuries. Last year, I think Corey Trice tore his ACL, but I mean, that wasn't because they were tackling. It was just he took a bad step, and unfortunately that happens, right? It was non-contact. So
Yeah.
they don't have a
Calvin got hurt in a walkthrough, right? Wasn't that Liz? It wasn't.
Yeah, it was a
walkthrough 2 years ago. Like,
yeah,
those kind of things can happen anytime.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember a starter having like a super severe injury that caused them to miss a ton of time because of a practice injury. Casey broke his arm in a preseason game 2 years ago, I believe, that forced him to miss the first half of the year.
He was suspended anyway, though.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. He
was suspended. It didn't end up costing that much. TJ took that block from Hawkinson against the Lions that ended up bothering him. He ended up getting it cleaned up while he was out for the pec injury. I don't know how much it would have bothered him if he hadn't been able to do that. That's the one I kind of think. I don't know. Do you feel like TJ Watt and Cam Hayward need to play at all in this game? Do they need any reps?
No, if I were the Steelers, I'd be cool holding out TJ, Cam, Minka, Sayamalo. I don't think you need to have those guys in there. Personally, I don't. I don't know what you need to learn about those guys anymore. Queen, I would even pulled out. I'll be quite honest with you. Those defensive stars don't need to play. I don't know what TJ Watt's getting from playing a preseason game. I really don't.
Yeah, I agree. I'd put, especially with Jaylen Warren banged up, I'd put Najee Harris in that list too. You already got one running back less than full health, sort of questionable for the season opener right now. What do I need to see from Najee Harris? Scott, he's been awesome all training camp, all preseason. The guy's been super engaged, super physical. There is nothing else I need to see from him. I'd be putting Najee Harris on the shelf for this one.
And I think, they don't necessarily need to see a ton from Cordero Patterson. They could just turn on the Falcons tape and see that. I would be interested in that scenario to see, what guys like P. Ryan and Ward can do, because if Warren has to miss week 1, that guy's going to be a practice squad call-up. So, and he might play legitimately. So I would like to see what those guys can do. I think that'd be a nice little test for them. And same thing with Sam Allo. Like, I want to see Spencer Anderson or Mason McCormick.
Yeah, I agree. So let's talk about some guys that you do want to see, whether it's guys that you don't think have done enough yet to maybe kind of earn the role that they're projected to have, or guys that could upset the apple cart of what we kind of were thinking coming into camp with another solid performance. Who are you looking forward to against the Lions?
Well, I really want to see Corey Trice. I really do. I think this is a big opportunity for him. As you mentioned, Joey Porter Jr. is banged up and probably won't play in this game, which means first team reps for Corey Trice. I just think that's really important for him to get a rep. I don't know who they're going to put out there, but if he's even facing like Jamison Williams, I think that's a really good matchup for him. So I want to see Corey Trice. I want to see him and see how he steps up against first teamers, because right now I think you and I would both agree at this point over the past 2 weeks with the first team reps he's gotten with Dante Jackson banged up and now with Joey banged up, he has probably solidified himself as the top backup to both of those guys. He's
I agree with
looked
that.
really good doing it too. He's looked really good in practice against GP, Van Jefferson, Pat Fryermuth. So in the last 2 games when he has been in there, he has played well against the Bills and the Texans. So he's a guy I really want to see. I just want to see how he kind of takes those first team reps because I think he's starting to hit his stride here. He's starting to gain that form we saw last year where he was really good in the spring and early summer. And I think he's starting to get back to that. And then the other guy that I really am looking forward to seeing personally in that secondary is I want to see TG, Thomas Graham. He's had a good camp, man. I mean, he just has consistently on the rise. He started as like a third string nickel outside corner. Now he's, mixing in there with the first team and nickel. He gets his hands on the ball. He's there for TFLs. You look up and you see who made that play, and it was Thomas Graham. I mean, I just feel like I say his name in practice a lot. I think he had a pretty solid performance against the Bills. He had 2 or 3 plays where I was like, he missed a tackle. And he's just a really small guy. So I think that happens sometimes. He's a smaller Slater player. But I want to see what he can do. I think he's a playmaker. I think he's kind of one of those players, Alan, that, he went to a big school in Oregon. He had pretty good tape in college, but he had some injuries. And he hasn't necessarily had a true easy shot because when he went to Cleveland had a massive amount of corner talent. And so he really couldn't crack that rotation. He stayed on their practice squad for a long time. He goes last year, gets hurt for the whole season, and then he goes here. So he's kind of one of these interesting cases where he had good college tape, but injuries held him back. And now he's kind of getting an opportunity at the right time.
Do you consider this a battle between Beanie Bishop and Thomas Graham? Is there a chance that both of them make it? And is there a chance that this is a battle with 2 of them just convincing the Steelers that one of them is good enough and that Omar Khan doesn't need to go call somebody else to be their slot corner?
I think it could be either of those 3 possibilities. Listen, I think Beanie has had a really good camp in spring. You and I sung his praises in the spring right away. He was awesome in the spring. He had a really good camp too. I thought he did. I thought last week he struggled before missing that Bills game. I thought that was the first time I really saw Beanie Bishop struggle. I wonder if his injury was nagging him a few days because he was getting beat pretty consistently last week. But even in the Texans game, I thought he was okay, but he wasn't as good as he was. I thought a lot about that for a lot of the rookies, though. I think, the rookies kind of came out in their first game, and it was just really fast for them. So I'm really interested to see him in his second game. TG has done a really nice job. Thomas Graham has just done a nice job all camp. Again, he stepped up in a really, really weird circumstance where he probably found out maybe the morning of the day before where he had to step in and start in the nickel. I think he did a really nice job. And it's not like he was facing a scrub either. Khalil Shakir is a legitimately pretty good slot receiver in the league. So I really like that. So I think, it could be either way. Here's what I will say. I think in order to keep both of them, I think the guy that loses the battle is going to have to prove themselves on special teams. I think that's going to have to be important. That guy has to be a gunner, good on kick coverage, whatever it might be. So that's where I think you keep 2. If both of them just stink out loud, I think you could see someone from the outside. Listen, they could easily have Chandon Sullivan and Patrick Peterson on speed dial. Both of them are still out there. There's other guys in the slot too. There's K'Wan Williams still out there. I mean, there are names out there. There are probably names that are going to get cut. And there's definitely, I think, the possibility they add a gunner. So we'll see. But I think it could go either way there. But I think Beanie and Thomas Graham have shown enough to at least take part of the slot job, whether that's run down or pass down. So I think one way or the other, it's going to be how do they have to split it up. But I do think it's a legit battle. I think Beanie missing the game opened the door for Thomas Graham.
Yeah, I agree with most of that, and I think Beanie's on the roster. I'm not sure whether they'll feel like they need someone else for that role or not. And then if not, like where does that other spot come from? Is it at the expense of a guy like Ryan Watts, who I think has played really well as a safety? Is it at the expense of one of like Mark Robinson or Tyler Matakevich, at linebacker? I'm not sure where you pull from to get that other spot. It's definitely kind of getting tight there. And I think the real answer to this slot also is like, how much are they even going to use a slot corner compared to using that 3 safety nickel, which I think, again, talking about the AFC North, and like Ravens use a lot of two tight end, the Browns use a lot of two tight end. Like you're probably going to see Deshaun Elliott do that role a whole bunch in games like that.
Yeah, I think he will be a significant role in that slot. He's going to take Minka's role from last year, where Minka played down in the box a ton. It's going to be Deshaun Elliott now. And so, yeah, he's going to factor into that. I don't know if you can convince yourself to keep two slots, but I do think Thomas Graham has the benefit of playing outside and inside, and he's done both. So I do think he can act as both, which I think gives him a distinct advantage in making the team. If he can play well on the inside, and maybe he doesn't even have to win the job, but if he could prove himself as a good inside backup and be a quality gunner, I think that's where things come into play there, where you can keep him over, say, Darius Rush or someone. And that's where you find that extra spot for the extra nickel. If you're not keeping 11 DBs, you could keep 11 DBs. I mean, that's not, I don't think, crazy to think about, but I agree that you have kind of a tough time finding the spot for it for 11 DBs. But you talk about Watts too. Ryan Watts could be a gunner. Can he prove himself as a gunner? That gunner battle is just going to be so important for this roster. These last 2 or 3 spots on the roster are going to be decided by that gunner battle. And I said it again, Alan. I haven't really thought that the Gunners have been too particularly impressive. I thought they were better against the Bills, but I don't think they've really stunned this preseason. So wouldn't be surprising to me if they went out and got a special teams focused guy either in the receiver room or the corner room.
Yeah, that was where I was going to go next with the gunner role on punts and to a lesser extent on the outside on kickoffs as well. Guys that have been in that role have been like Des Fitzpatrick, Darius Rush, Ryan Watts. We've seen a little bit of Beanie Bishop there. I don't really think any of them have been very good. I think the Steelers have good special teamers in terms of big-bodied guys. Obviously Killebrew and Matakevich are very experienced, sort of known commodities there. Nick Herbig should again be kind of a monster on special teams. Peyton Wilson, I think, is definitely going to be a really good special teamer. A couple of the tight ends, whoever kind of makes the team between Hayward and Pruitt and Rodney Williams, I think they're all capable special teamers. But as far as like the small guys, the skinny ones, I don't know that they have a ton that they should feel real good about. I don't think it's gone great for those Gunners. Des Fitzpatrick's been working there. You saw kind of Quez Watkins' adventure as a return man. I don't think of the speed guys. I'm not sure there's really anybody that sort of separated themselves as a guy that's put his foot down and said, I'm making this team because of special teams. Like, I think it's all very much still up in the air going into this third preseason game.
I agree. And I'm just not sure. Listen, I think Des Fitzpatrick has been their best gunner. I'm just not sure if they can validate having the 5th receiver be just a gunner. I just don't know if they can, because I think they're going to add a receiver at some point before the season, whether that's Ayuk or someone else. So I just don't know where you find room for Dez. I think that's another issue. And, we talk about Rush. Rush has been probably their second best gunner, but has struggled at corner. They probably have to cycle through some of these guys. Like Thomas Graham just hasn't had a lot of gunner reps. Like we haven't seen him do a lot of gunner stuff. Maybe they just need to see what he can do and, what Ryan Watts can do. I think Watts and Beanie are 2 of their probably more intriguing gunner guys because they're new to it, but they have fight in them. And I think Watts has kind of been bullied at times, but I also think he's had some really nice reps where he's kind of shown through there. So we'll see. But, man, this gunner battle right now is going to be really important for who makes that bottom of the roster. And, again, I look at that corner room, and I think there's room to add someone from the outside that can play that position. So
I saw this suggested on Twitter today, and I wish I could remember who had brought it up, but a little trade for Avonte Maddox. Someone like that, I think that'd be a pretty perfect fit for them. Sure up 2 spots at once, right? Like take care of that slot corner role and be a punt gunner as well.
Yeah, I think it was Derek that said that.
There you go.
Yeah, so that makes sense to me. Avonte Maddox, good scheme fit for them too. Really feisty player. So I think he would fit that mold well. I also, saw yesterday Najee Thompson from the Vikings got waived injured. I don't know what the injury is, but he's probably going to revert to IR and end up being released from IR. I think he could be an interesting name. He's one of the best special teams gunners in the NFL, so that could be an interesting name to look out too if you're looking for just special teams on the smaller guys side. But I really think that is. I think corner, when we're talking about the cut downs and the waiver claims and that area, I think outside corner with Gunner, I think that's the spot to watch. I think receiver, if they add there, are probably more of a trade. So we'll see what ends up happening. But I think that is definitely going to be one of the spots they're going to be evaluating very closely, because Cam Johnston has been punting the ever loving heck out of the footballs. So they got to have guys that can cover down there, because a lot of these guys have way too much room to move on these punts when they're getting them.
I felt like it was dangerous against Buffalo, where there was just too much green grass in between those gunners and the punt returners. I definitely think it's an area where they need to clean it up. I thought they're better against Buffalo than Houston, but Johnson was kicking the ball even farther, so they needed to do even more. On the offense, I think we were in agreement that like the sort of panic over the state of the offense is probably a little bit overblown. But I do think the concern about one guy on that offense is legitimate, and that's Broderick Jones. Talked to him a little bit this week about what's going on, and I think he sort of tried to take the responsibility on himself and say, hey, it's not the injury, it's not the brace, I just need to be better. But man, he does not look right out there. He does not look like the player we saw last year, which I thought he needed to improve upon coming into this season. And he doesn't even necessarily look that good when you look at the tape against the Bills in particular. What are you seeing about Broderick Jones right now? I guess, what is your level of concern about Broderick Jones right now? Let's frame it that way.
Well, yeah, I think that's legitimately concerning because of how he's losing. He's getting overpowered. I think what really is concerning for me, Alan, is when you turn on the tape, it's not just how he's losing in pass pro. It's when you watch the run game tape and you see him just not getting any vertical movement at all in the run. I mean, he's just not moving anyone in the run game. That was the one thing last year he did consistently. He moved guys, got out in space, destroyed them on the run. He was a huge plus in the run game, no doubt about it. This year he's not really getting any movement. He can say all he wants that elbow isn't bothering him, but there are too many signs for me to say it is bothering him. I think that is one of them. Why is he two-hand punching? That's something that I have talked with him and Pat Meyer about, that they're trying to get out of him. They're trying to let him use independent hands. That is one of the credences Pat Meyer teaches, is independent hands. And meanwhile, Broderick Jones is two-hand punching because I don't think the right arm has any significant punch. You look at when Rousseau was hitting him and when he was trying to punch Rousseau, and he was shrugging off the right arm like it was nothing. He has no power behind his right punch at all right now. And when you two-hand punch, you lean forward, you get wide, you mistime it. And so all of that plays into account when he opens up his chest and then gets rocked to the side. So all of that works together. He also has technical deficiencies. I think he talked about getting to his spot too quickly, which is throwing off his hand timing and placement as well. So that's also a part of it. But I am concerned about it, and I think the elbow is an issue. I do. There's too many signs on the tape to say it's not an issue.
At the very least, I think if he's not hurt, if he's being faithful, but I mean, he did tell me when he first got the brace that it really bothered him, that he couldn't do anything with it, that he felt like it was really holding him back. Now I know he said, "Well, I've gotten better." I'm like, man, I don't know. Like I see a player that does not look like the same guy we saw last year. And so to me, that tells me something is wrong. Okay, so let's say this is the Broderick Jones you're going to get for the early part of the season. What do you do? Like, what do you play him like this? Do you try to play Troy Fautanu as soon as he's back from that knee injury? Where do you go from here?
If he plays like he did against the Texans and the Bills, you can't in good faith put him out there. I'm sorry. I understand Troy Fautanu is going to miss the rest of the preseason, and even his game against the Texans was rough. But look at the way Troy Fautanu lost against the Texans. It was because he was overthinking things. It was because he went too far inside and tried to pick up a twist this wrong way, and et cetera, et cetera. Those mental errors are much easier to fix than what Broderick Jones is going through right now. And so if he can't play with that elbow, if he needs time to rest that elbow, which might be what happens, he might just need time off, and that elbow might need to heal. If that happens, I think week one, and I previously didn't think this was really a possibility, Alan. I think week 1, if he has another game like he did, I think you have to seriously consider putting Fautano at right tackle and then putting Dan Moore at left tackle. I think that is definitely not the ideal pairing you would want. But I just think Broderick Jones has, in some ways, on some of these drives, single-handedly just ruined the drive. I mean, he's put them behind the sticks at times, just because you can't get beat to the inside like he has and expect anything to go well. You just can't. It's not going to go well. The worst thing you can do is lose inside and fast as a tackle. So it doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right side. If you do that, your quarterback's getting sacked. And so they got to see more out of him. This is a big game for him. I think he needs to have a solid game where he's just passable. Where I don't want to hear Broderick Jones's name at all. Like, I don't want to mention Broderick Jones on Saturday. I just want to look back and say, didn't mention that guy's name. He must have been solid. And so I think that's what they kind of need out of him. But if he keeps playing like this, I think you have to go more on Fautano. I think you do.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I would even consider playing Broderick Jones on the left right now. If you think he's already getting beaten to the inside and he's having problems with his right arm, like that would feel like the worst of both worlds. Like that, like if he's got to play, it's got to be at right tackle right now. I know that's not what they want to do long term, but I'm just reacting to what I'm seeing. He does not look like a valuable left tackle option right now.
No, he doesn't. And he doesn't look like a viable right tackle option either. He doesn't look like a viable starter. I mean, that's what he doesn't look like a guy that can start in those first 2 games. That is what we have seen. He's not a starter level player right now. Dan Moore has been passable. He's been fine on the left side. We know what Dan Moore is, but he's been fine. And Troy Fautano has upside and is an extremely experienced player. So I'll trust Troy Fautano to jump into those waters and learn. I think that's what I would do. I think listen, if this elbow is really bothering him, Alan, what probably is going to need to happen is he just is going to need to rest it. And that might be what happens. He might need to miss some time. And that's not ideal, especially with Dylan Cook injured. But that might be what has to happen, right? That might be what has to happen.
Spencer Anderson, starting right tackle. Like, I mean, it doesn't feel like we're that far away from that. If Fontana is not back and ready, man, I mean, by the way, I think Anderson is the Steelers offensive lineman who has had the best training camp, maybe compared to the way he was playing before. I thought he's been great. So, I mean, okay, but man, what looked like a position where you were thinking, man, maybe they could trade Dan Moore and get like a 5th-round pick out of him at the beginning of this training camp. The depth has evaporated very quickly.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. It's a legit concern right now, I think, when you look at it. So I think let's see what happens on Saturday. If he has a better game, I think you can be more comfortable with him starting week 1. But right now, if he has another bad game where he's getting thrown out like he is a rag doll, I mean, I've never seen Broderick Jones get thrown around like he did against the Bills. I just have not seen it before. If he has another game like that where the elbow is clearly bothering him and he just has no power and he's getting no vertical movement in the run game, I just think it has to be more in Fautano. As long as Troy Fautano is ready week 1, and he said he is, then I think that is what you have to do if he struggles. But if he has a good game on Saturday, I think you put him in the starting lineup week 1 and let's see what happens. But I mean, do you want him on the left side facing Matt Judon? I don't know. That could be risky.
Yeah, I agree. Good stuff, Nick. Really appreciate you filling in for us here on a Thursday. And let's get back to your duties there at PennLive.com. Tell everybody where they can find you on social media and read all your stuff.
Yeah, you can read my stuff at PennLive.com, of course. Check out the Steelers stuff over there. Make sure to follow me on Twitter, Farabaugh FB. Still there. I've been there for like ever. So make sure to check out over there. More Steelers stuff coming as usual.
And you can find me at @Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Our site's account is PGH Steelers Now, SteelersNow.com. You can sign up for SN Plus. I told you I'd give you a sticker. You missed our special, but we've got a consolation prize going out right now. I'm working on a couple of big stories and a new weekly feature for SN Plus that's going to debut tonight if I get my butt in gear. Maybe tomorrow. I don't know. We'll see. And also working on a big feature story as well. All the best stuff for myself, Derek Bell, and the whole rest of the team for those that subscribe. And, of course, like and subscribe and click the bell for notifications here on the YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive, Steelers Morning Rush, our Sights and Sounds, our post-game, all that good stuff. And if you're listening on another platform, give us a 5-star review and subscribe there as well. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Appreciate Nick stopping by. And we'll see you tomorrow. DB's back. Smitty's back. Normal Friday afternoon. We'll see you then.